Welcome back to the Football Tragics. Before we get into it, I've just noticed 81% of you guys aren't subscribed, so hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 100 subscribers. Not much. We're not asking for much, but let's get that. Let's hit that first milestone. We make weekly content. Every week we bring you Premier League reviews. So let's get into this week's review. We'll start off with the big one. Liverpool, Chelsea. We say it's the big one, but God, it was a mid-table clash, wasn't it, Morty? Your boys versus mine. Nil or draw. Talk to me from a Liverpool perspective. How was it?
Absolute snooze fest. Yeah, obviously the heart's jumping at the start of the game, and it wanted to go straight back to sleep for the following 80 minutes of that game. So there's not much else to say than yes, this is literally 9th v 10th at this point. So it's what you expect.
It definitely felt like that. I mean, the hype for it, the build-up was massive, but in reality, like the two teams are playing like mid-table teams. We're not playing with any sort of excitement. I like to think that Chelsea started pretty well. Thought you guys started quite well also, but then I feel like we took control of the game a little bit better than you guys did. Then the second half comes, you come out of the blocks firing. You guys look great. I think I was saying in the commentary, this is the Liverpool of old. This is Klopp's Liverpool. And then 10 minutes later, you guys are back to boring crap football, and we're much the same. I think nil or draw about sums it up. And we can go into this for hours. We can go back and forth. But the reality is both teams just look horrible right now. I mean, Darwin Núñez doesn't have his shooting boots. Cody Gakpo, who I want to obviously ask you about, what's going on with him? He's not really hit the ground running.
I think that position's just bloody cursed. We haven't had an actual striker up there. I think we just need to turn them both into irregular levels of mystique, playing for about 10 minutes every 2 weeks, and they'll score. But other than that, Gakpo, he only had 2 real chances, and he put him about 20 metres above the bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frustrating watch, but in saying that, our problem is still the midfield. We lose the ball. We don't press. There's no press. I think there's some stats coming out across the whole season as a whole. I think the possession won in the final third. Every year, it's been up in the 60-65% of the ball. Whatever, I don't know what time frame it was in, but it was won in that final third of the thing. And I think we're playing at about 37% this season. It just shows that there's no. If anything, it proves how key Bobby was, to be honest, because we don't need another player that's going to score. Salah's there. If Núñez is playing off on the left, Diaz, all these Jota, all these abundance of these attackers, but we need some bloody midfielders. And I'm going to be spewing if we're going to sit here and have this whole hopes of this Qatari, Saudi takeover or whatever it may be. Well, Bellingham's coming. And we'll end up with, I don't even know who we'll end up with. James Ward-Prowse.
You've ended up with Arthur, and he hasn't obviously barely played a minute, been injured. How much are you missing Sadio Mane? I mean, is this season more than ever just shown the levels, how badly you would have liked to have him now? Or
I think it's emphasised the fact we're missing a player like him, but we do have 2 out injured. So it's tough. It's tough at the moment. We're spending money. It's looking like we're spending money, but we just keep signing all these attackers because they're all out injured. But yeah, we've got 3 midfielders, and we have we've turned attackers into midfielders, and Elliott and Carvalho. That doesn't make sense to me. We need to fill it.
Especially those 2. You got Elliott, who played midweek in the cup off the left, didn't he? Quite high up, and then you put him back into. Well, I suppose I think he was on the left, up in this game, but midweek he played in midfield. So it's the chopping and changing of a player. And I think the root of your problems is that midfield. You go out and sign Cody Gakpo, who exciting, killed at the World Cup. Fans want him, want to see it happen. It was kind of out of nowhere, really, because it was United's to sign. But it's more of an exciting signing than it is one that Klopp would usually make, in my opinion. I think that he usually gets them pretty spot on. And look, it's still early. He could still go out and score 20 goals before the end of the season. Who knows? But I think it just feels as though you haven't signed the players you've needed to sign this window, or even not.
It looks like we signed him for a team that we're hoping for, but we need the team first and then get these players in. Because fully fit, we're going to have Gakpo, Nunez, Carvalho, Elliott all sit on the bench. Firmino joining him. We'll have Jota, Diaz, and Salah up top. Yes, you play two of them, rotate them through, but that's more than enough cup coverage. Like, I know we played in all cups last year, and we still didn't need that much depth. Like, one come in, replacing Mane, fair enough. But did we really need Gakpo now? No, need a midfielder. Even if it was to sign Bellingham, sign one now for whatever it may be. Like, Arthur got injured, sure, but Arthur was never the answer. But on the other side of the pitch, you got Chelsea just throwing money at everything.
I don't want to say you're getting left behind by not signing players, but that could be the reality of it. Like, we're signing for fun. I mean, I believe that UEFA have just announced, like maybe a couple of hours ago, some sort of rule now that you can't sign players for a certain amount of years, because that's what Chelsea have just done. Heading at eight-year contracts to Mudryk and the likes to get around the financial fair play. And we're not going to get into that because it's too many details to crack on with. It would just be fans going back and forth, what's right and what's wrong. But yeah, that's the reality of it. We're spending money for fun. I mean, you've got an owner who, Todd Bowley's come in and he wants to spend money, but then you've got, what are you guys? I can't even remember the name, the Fenway Group, whatever they are, who don't want to spend and who I suppose are in the position of looking to sell the club. But you need a midfielder now. You need some depth. You need some cover because you still are in some competitions. We're not, and we're still making all these signings. We're out of every cup competition except for Champions League, and we're still signing for fun. But speaking of those signings, from a Liverpool perspective, how did Mykhailo Mudryk look on his Chelsea debut for you? I mean, he absolutely rinsed James Milner, which isn't that hard to do. He's about 45 years old now. But from your perspective, how did he look? Will he be a success given his price tag?
I don't know. Does he fit into that Nunez mold of, as long as you don't call him a striker, he look all right? Because on the ball, yeah, he looked pretty good, but we've seen it off and on again. I mean, you've had the likes of Werner. You've got Havertz playing there at the moment. Like, yeah, well, you'll have to wait and see. I can't judge him yet. He didn't look horrible. He didn't look great. He had a couple of decent chances. Skinny Milner at right back. I'm more or less concerned the fact that it's just a position at this point because no matter who we throw there. But yeah, other than that, mid-table clash for the ages, nil-all draw. That's what we all deserve, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, as a Chelsea fan, I'm looking forward to seeing him play a bit more. I'm looking forward to seeing when we get João Felix back and how they can play together. And I suppose getting a few of the boys back who are injured, Reece James, Ben Chilwell, the list goes on. I don't want to come on too much with the injuries, but like you guys have been affected a bit. We have. Is that a sign of, is that why Chelsea and Liverpool are sitting 9th and 10th right now? Should we be a lot higher up? So the second half of the season is massive. But before we wrap this game up, what's your final prediction for Liverpool? Where are they finishing this year? Will they crack? Can they get top 4? Or is that out of the question? Is it just now 5th? Is it just about?
See, the issue is if we win 2 games, with our game in hand, win 2 games, we're a point behind Spurs. Yeah. And Spurs have been Spurs at the moment. So, but at the same time, you've got to win those games, and everyone else can be there or thereabouts. So, time will tell. I mean, we'll play City again. We'll probably beat City, and we'll go and lose to Everton the week after. So, yeah. I mean, we got Wolves again for like the 5th time in this month alone. So, just give us City, give us some confidence back because it's about our only team we can just continually get up on.
Yeah. Well, I think now for Chelsea, I think it's a matter of just like finishing the season strong, as bad as it sounds. Like, I think just kind of building a bit of a structure and getting players playing well and kind of building into next season. I think this season isn't, you don't want to say it's a write-off because you don't want any season to be, but I don't think top 4 is achievable at this point. We're 10 points behind United. They don't look like slipping up. I mean, they obviously suffered a loss, which we'll get into, but I think it's now about just finishing the season strong, and maybe we finish 4 or 5 points away from it, but went on maybe a 10 unbeaten record of 10 towards the end of the season, something like that. Just get players firing, get a full team back, and maybe go deepish in the Champions League if we're lucky. But yeah, look, our 2 teams, mid-table clash, It was a nil or draw. It didn't live up to what it should have. So let's move forward. A game that I suppose did live up. Leicester 2-2 with Brighton. Now, I mean, Leicester have struggled this year. There's no two ways about it. They're sitting on 18 points, just 1 point from safety. There's a lot of teams there. Yeah. But then you've got Brighton, on the other hand, who are absolutely flying. Is this result for Brighton, given where Leicester are sitting, a poor one? Should they have gotten more from this game? I mean, it was an 88th minute equaliser. What do you think?
Look, don't get me wrong, Brighton playing some good football, but they're playing the sort of football that's going to be competitive against the top six, and the rest of the league are going to park the bus. And that's where I think, you know, the top teams sort of become clear because they can scrap those points. Whereas at Brighton, they find it a bit tougher. Like they're playing against teams who just go, well, 1 point's very good for us. So, and that's exactly where Leicester kind of sit at the moment. So I think Brighton have got that hurdle to get over. But yeah.
So teams are coming up against Brighton like they would come up against a big team, like a top 4 team, and they're happy to get a point against the Brighton, whereas in the past, I suppose you would fancy yourself getting 3 against Brighton.
Yeah, well, I think Brighton kind of take the whole league as they set out to win every game kind of thing, and they don't. Yeah, they're not that Brighton of old where Dan Burn at the back and just
an exciting. I suppose they're an exciting team now. I mean, I look at the likes of Matoma, who's just kind of burst on the scene all of a sudden. He's benched Trossard, who has now gone to Arsenal, and he's got like a few goals in his last few games. Like, he's absolutely killing it. Signed for only $3 million. I wouldn't be surprised if bloody Chelsea go and pick him up for 40 in the summer. Like, to have, I suppose their scouting is just phenomenal to start. But they're on just a nice steady rise. I mean, they're obviously overachieving, I think, but hopefully they don't turn into a Leicester and go backwards, do a Wolves and go backwards in a few years' time. If they can just continue to steadily build, I mean, a top 6 finish for them, even top 8 finish for them is outstanding. But Leicester, on their end, struggling big time. It's obviously clear that, you know, the likes of Vardy, who can barely score a goal these days, is too old. They're struggling. And do I think they'll be relegated? Probably not. I think they're still, again, there's worse teams than them, but they're treading on thin water, that's for sure. And how much longer does Brendan Rodgers get? I mean, you predicted it 3 years ago. I can't wait for that one to come true because we need it to happen. We need Brendan Rodgers gone.
We do need him gone, and
all right, let's move on.
Sorry,
go on.
Oh no, he just needs to go. That's all.
Double down. All right, Aston Villa 1-0 over Southampton. Now, I know you're pretty vocal about Southampton. You're not a fan of them. They are rock bottom of the league. What did they beat? City in the cup? Or they beat someone in the cup? Sorry, possibly
City.
Yeah. And then they go out and lose at home to Aston Villa. Like, what's the go? Aston Villa, they're having a decent-ish season. They're pretty good since, you know, Emery came in. But for Southampton, you'd probably bet your money on them going down, wouldn't you, at this point?
I would have put my money on at the start of the season, and I should have, because everyone laughed at me. Well, they're exactly where I put them, so they can get in the bin. Unless you give Southampton a dead ball play anywhere about 25 to 30 yards out, you're winning the game, because that's Southampton's only chance of scoring. And Villa would just be happy to pick up the 3 points. I mean, wasn't that tough of a game. Probably should have scored a few more, but Villa just get the 3 points and they're done. They're happy with that. Yeah,
I think for Southampton, it's a matter of sign a striker. Che Adams has not been producing. Stuart Armstrong doesn't produce. I mean, they just need to go out and sign a striker that can score them goals, because James Ward-Prowse, he's a loyal man, but he could well and truly be off in the summer if they're not careful, because he's better than the Championship football, in my opinion. Like, he's a good player, but they are relying on his free kicks and his penalties to keep them up, and it's probably not going to happen at this point. But Villa, I mean, they're flying under Unai Emery, and again, how far can they go? They're similar, I suppose they're a little off Brighton, but how far can they go under Unai Emery? A good free-flowing manager, completely changed how they play compared to, under Steven Gerrard. Danny Ings has gone, but it doesn't really matter because Ollie Watkins is still producing. So a nice little rise up the table for them. They've had a good few weeks. And now let's get into a team who haven't had a good few weeks, haven't had a good season, really, have they? Everton, your enemies, I suppose. 2-0 loss to West Ham. It was the eventual fate of Frank Lampard. Has been sacked as of, I believe, this morning. This was the battle of the El Saccago, you could call it, couldn't you? David Moyes versus Frank Lampard. David Moyes came away with the win. He lives another day from the gulag. What do you reckon, Lampard? Did he have to go? Like, is this problem at Everton worth deeper than the manager?
It's 100% deeper than the manager. No manager, I think, is fixing that club, and I think the problem is as well that if Everton somehow scrap their way to staying up this season, they're still in the mud with financial play. Their team, they can't sign anyone else. Their team will be another year older. It's just a matter of it's not if, it's just when. When is it going to happen? Because not even a Sean Dyche is going to be able to come into that squad and play hoofball and keep them up, because they're just not. They don't have a good enough defense to play that sort of football. They don't have an attacking presence. Calvert-Lewin has had about half a season of glory, and everyone was riding his thing. You put a dress on, and all of a sudden you can't play football. Read into that how you will, but West Ham. This is the result West Ham should be getting. Still not great, to be honest, but no fault of Lampard's, I guess. I think Everton's just they're stuffed for a while. They're going to have a brand new stadium for the championship.
I think Everton were just. I feel like they're still just riding off the high of staying up last season. Like Frank Lampard, I wouldn't say did the miracle, but he kept them up, and they were buzzing from that. Great scenes all around, but they didn't improve from then on. I feel like they signed a couple of decent players, but they haven't produced. Calvert-Lewin's been injured for half the season, but also has just fallen off, hasn't scored the goals like he was towards the end of last season. They were riding the high of staying up, and they didn't build from that. Obviously, Lampard plays a style of football, like you mentioned. He likes to attack. It's a bit like Bielsa. It doesn't work for a team like Everton right now, because those games where they were picking up points last season was the ones where he was changing it and just playing defensive football and getting points, and it kept him up. And then he goes and tries to play a system again and doesn't work for Everton. And his fate obviously has been sealed. But like you said, not even Sean Dyche could keep him up at this point. It looks as though apparently Bielsa's their number one target. Again, plays that style of football. It's exactly the example I used. How are they going to stay up with a Bielsa in charge? I don't know. He doesn't even speak a word of English. He has a translator. So
unless they're signing him just purely on the fact they're going to the championship and Bielsa's got Leeds out of championship. That might be the only case, because I don't see a reason. If you signed a Sean Dyche, I'd understand. You go, you're trying to just stay up. You're doing whatever you want. But Bielsa, it's not going to.
Well, they
get you up.
Well, I believe Everton's one of a few teams who have never ever been relegated from the top flight. But I mean, I suppose no team's too good to be relegated, and it could happen, unfortunately for them. Now West Ham on the other end. David Moyes lives another day, I suppose. But how long does he have? If they go and lose the next 2 or 3 in a row, is he gone, do you think?
I think he might be safe on the fact that there's a couple of clubs doing worse. If he scraps a couple of points here or there, might gloss over where he's at. And if he sits there and goes, I need to sign this one, and then he'd probably be there for another year.
They've got a tough run. They've got Newcastle. Well, they've got Derby in the Cup, FA Cup. Then they've got Newcastle, Chelsea, and Spurs. I know Chelsea aren't that great right now, but I'd still fancy them. Yeah, but I wouldn't expect West Ham to pick up more than 2 points from that 3 games, and I don't know if that's enough. So we'll have to wait and see.
Change if they go out and beat Spurs and they grab a point before and they've taken 4 points from that, go on and draw with Chelsea.
I think he probably is safe.
Their season. That's a season on a slide that puts him to what, probably 12th or something.
Yeah, there or thereabouts. I think it probably does keep him in his job, but for now, I think he is still on the chopping block, and it could be a matter of time. But I suppose now let's get into a couple of teams. Well, at least one team who are doing a little worse than them. Bournemouth. They had a great start to the season, but they've fallen off. 1-1 draw with Forest, and I think this kind of game just kind of went as you expected it to. Forest had a lot of chances. So did Bournemouth, to be fair, but not a lot on target. And, I mean, a point for either team's not really ideal at this stage. Would you agree?
Yeah. I think not. Forest will be happy with their 1 point. They're just kind of clawing their way across. getting out of that relegation zone they were kind of almost in. And Bournemouth, they need some points. So their 1 point's not going to help them very much there. So.
Yeah, I suppose Forest, Forest out of the last 4 games, 2 wins, 2 draws, unbeaten in 4. I mean, they're slowly climbing out of that relegation zone, which is perfect. They're in 13th now, 4 points clear. Bournemouth, on the other hand, haven't won in God knows how long. The Google only goes as far as the last 5, so I'm going to say they haven't won at least 5, probably more. So they could be going back down, and I think out of the teams that came up, obviously they do look the worst, even though they did start quite well. So yeah, all this talk about going down, but there's like 6, 7 teams who could. So it's a matter of 2 wins in a row kind of gets you out of there. But speaking of a team that, I mean, they're flying high, but have been told they play the worst football in the world, the most boring football in the world right now. Newcastle United, 0 or draw again. They've only conceded 11 goals this year, but again, everybody since that Arsenal game's gone and said that that's just shocking. Nobody wants to see this team in Champions League because it's just snooze fest football, park the bus. What do you reckon? Does it matter how you win games, or draw games? Sorry, does it matter?
If they're doing this to attract some players for next season, then fair play to them. But if they want to continue on like this, they're going to start getting some hate. I mean, they still sit there and talk about their loss to Liverpool, which happened in the 98th minute or whatever it was. Yeah. But if you went back through that game, they were on the floor for a good 29 minutes of that thing. And it's no different to this one. I mean, if you're doing it against Palace, like, get a grip, Newcastle. Let's be real. You know, you've been on form. You've been doing well. Don't fall back to that trap because you've dropped 2 points. These are the points that you're going to need, and you're going to have clubs back form. You know, flick a switch, Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool all turn it back on, and Newcastle will find themselves back down in 6th or 7th. It's that cutthroat at the top. Like,
they've definitely got a good comfy cushion at the minute. But yeah, it's if they don't produce a couple of results, I mean, 3 draws in their last 4. I mean, against a couple of decent teams also, but you know they probably should be beating a Palace. On face value, it's 0 or draw, but looking at the stats, they had 7 shots on target, so Palace has 1. They did batter them all over the park, but just couldn't find that goal. But yeah, they need to score goals against a Palace. The way they're in, the form they're in, it's a winnable game. It should be a 3 point. So I expect them to kind of turn it back on because I don't really associate them as being a boring team under Eddie Howe. But yeah, I think it's a better point for Palace than it is for Newcastle. All right, Man City 3-0 over Wolves. Erling Haaland 3 goals. Do we even say anything more? He's scored a shit ton of goals. He's got more goals already in January than last season's Golden Boot, Salah and Son. Like, what else do you want to say?
Yeah, he's going to be going. He's going to last 1 season. Let's be real. Someone's going to come for him.
Well,
City going to have to come for the thing.
It's only Real Madrid, that would look to replace him, wouldn't they? Look to replace Benzema with him.
Well, what better place to go? I mean, the only downfall. Well, the downfall is that City can afford to throw as much money as they possibly can at him, but the financial fair play comes into it, and it's a bit more cutthroat than the dodgy dealings in Spain. So, yeah. And I mean, you already can see that. Not saying that Haaland's been bad or City have been bad this season, but they've definitely, across the board, not been as free-flowing. They're kind of just being direct to Haaland. Haaland's going to score, no doubt in that, but they've been leaking in defence, and if they start losing these players because they're throwing more money at Haaland, it's going to be a bit of a risky situation. But for now, they've got him. They've got KDB feeding him. There's not much else you can say,
the question that's come up recently, I think just a lot of people are saying it. Some people are saying City are better off without Haaland. They were a better team without him. Is that kind of what you're agreeing with at this point? Is that what you're kind of alluding to?
Yes, but in saying that, if it wasn't, you probably could even say Haaland is the best player in that team, but he's detrimental to the team as a whole, I think. If you put Haaland up front for Newcastle, you'd be laughing because you've got that kind of grit behind it. Like, you see Cancelo's been laughed at all season, and I'm no bigger critic because of how Trent gets treated, but it's been the slight exposed because Haaland's just going to go, I'm taking this shot, no questions asked, I'm not keeping the ball, and then Cancelo's got to run back 40 metres. it's exactly how Trent kind of has been done this season, and that's where the ball's being lost. It kind of thing, but it might be what wins me Champions League. So, you know, Pep's changing it up.
I think that's what obviously this signing was inevitably do, wasn't it? Is to win that Champions League. They haven't got yet. They've got Premier League titles. That's what they're keen on getting. He was the mega signing that's come in. He's scoring goals. He's doing what he's meant to do. He's not missing a whole lot of chances. He is taking his chances. He's scoring goals, absurd amount of goals to be fair. But they probably did play a little bit better free-flowing football when they have the likes of a Phil Foden or even a Jack Grealish or a Mahrez something through the middle. And plays the false nine and get a bit more possession. But they're playing direct. It's working. But they are, defensively not as strong as they have been in previous seasons. And Champions League, that's where it will come undone. For now, though, the 5 points behind Arsenal, 8 if Arsenal win their game in hand. Who's your kind of pick? I know it's still, again, early, but who's your pick for the title? Are you still saying Arsenal? Or because, they've still got to play each other twice?
Arsenal's to lose. Come at me. Really, I mean, we can't not sit here and say that now, because we say it about City for the last 5 years. We've said it about Liverpool at this position. It's their title to lose now. They've done all the hard work. They need to take it as it comes and go with it, because they don't even have the excuse of playing other cups, because they're not in anything, are they?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think they're in. I think they're still in FA Cup. No, if they're in. I don't think they're in Carabao. I think they got knocked out. But yeah, they're still in FA Cup, but they're not in, obviously, European football. So, are they in? No, they're in Europa League, I believe. But yeah, this is obviously theirs to lose. They do still have to play City twice. That's the only thing, and that's a big swing. That's 6 points right there. But based on the result, we'll get into not this game, but the one after. You would fancy Arsenal to go on and do it. But before we get into that, Leeds versus Brentford. I mean, we can probably skip over it. Brentford having a decent season. Leeds, I still think, again, Jesse Marsh is kind of hanging on by a thread. He's kind of maybe a result here or there away. And I think he's more just living off vibes at this point, much like Bielsa was for a while. I think he's a fan favourite, so they don't want to get rid of him.
Basically, yeah. But at the same time, if, we're talking about Arsenal suffered through that time. They built with a good manager. And these clubs need to look at that and go, okay, we understand Bielsa didn't work out. It wasn't working out. Okay, find the new one. Build to him now. Because you can't just keep this cycle going, because you look at the clubs that keep sacking these managers and they're all in this exact same position as everyone else. Barring your Chelsea, who just throw enough money every season, every club. But it's in reality, it's what it is.
But is there a difference between an Arsenal who are not going to get relegated if they have a bad season? I mean, they were bottom of the table after 3 games last year, and we all laugh at that would happen, but they were never going to get relegated. So they can kind of endure a bad period, go through 1 or maybe 2 seasons of no European football. Whereas a Leeds, if they have a bad season, could well and truly get relegated, and then that's back to the 10 steps behind again. Like, can they afford to have a bad season? Do they need to just bring in a Sean Dyche to get them Premier League football again?
But who's asking for this? Because they've come up from the Championship, they're holding on. The toughest part is staying up in the Premier League. They've done it. They've managed to do it. They're not expecting to win the league. Like, you can't. That board of directors can't be sitting there going, "We need to win the league." Because if they are, then they need to pull rocks out of their heads, because that's not how it works. But if you stay true to a manager, if they're staying up, they're not far off, but at the same time, they're not there. All right, they're 15th. They're a couple of points clear. They've still got a game in hand. Just let them play. Let them play some football. This is what's kind of, I don't know if it's just me or not, but football's progressively, the Big Six has only become the Big Six because the other teams are just so desperate to stay up. Well, but it has. That's kind of what everyone owning these clubs is like. Well, you have to stay up. They have to play
and that's why I think the few more recent seasons you've seen teams like Brighton emerge. Obviously, Leicester and Wolves for a couple of years there. West Ham emerged. They all emerge, and now Newcastle, and they kind of challenge the Big Six. And now the Big Six could possibly become the Big Eight, whatever. So that's good to see. But yeah, like you said, for a number of years there's a lot of teams who are just happy to stay up. And that's why the big teams are going ahead and winning and getting Champions League football, Europa League football every single year. And I guess that's maybe why they've brought in the Conference League, because they want another team to challenge for European football and kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, but what Premier League teams ever do well besides top six? Meanwhile, you've got Spanish teams that we all laugh at as a farmers league, and they go out and win Europas and all sorts of things. There's
Exactly
Premier League
right.
teams
Like,
playing in it.
yeah,
That's
Villarreal, Sevilla. That's their competition, bread and butter. Like, they love that. They love the Europa League. They win it pretty much every second season, if not every season. Like, but yeah, you don't often see the what do you call it? The Premier League team win the Europa League. I know Chelsea done it a couple of times. United did it, but Arsenal have lost in the final. You know, United lost in the final as well.
That's the big six again, though.
Yeah,
you're never gonna see Palace scrap into this position and go for a run in the cup.
Yeah,
because they sit there and laugh at it.
Is that the matter of there's only 2-3 good teams in the league compared to it? Like, Newcastle might, but for the most part, they're not going to get Champions League football. They're not going to get Europa League football to be able to get given that chance. I mean, West Ham did well in the Conference League last season.
It's just, I'm not saying that they're bad or it's a bit diff, but you're just never going to see Leeds make, Europa and go for a run in Europa. They look at it and go, it's a waste of our time. The Premier League's still our focus. It shouldn't be like that. They should still be going for a run in the cup.
Yeah, well, they don't even go for runs in the cup, do they? Because you see the likes of City win the Carabao Cup most years these days. Even the FA Cup, they were lucky to get a semi-final. Southampton have done it this year, but they'll probably bow out. I mean, who knows? Forest and Southampton, are in it this year. So that's a good chance for silverware for both of them. It would be important. But again, do you prioritise staying up over a cup? Yes, you do. And that's unfortunately kind of where it comes down to. Let's move on. The big game. It did live up to the hype, unlike the Chelsea-Liverpool game. Arsenal 3-2 over United. In the 90th minute, Eddie Nketiah wins it. Morty talked about this game. It had everything, really.
Look, I don't know. Arsenal were kind of asleep. Then they just kicked straight back, and then it's just backwards and forward. It was just, as much as I hate to say it, it was enjoyable football because it's back and forth. They're going for it. They're just pulling whatever it out. I mean, I love to blow up at the end. United, not even close to being offside. Like, there's been much worse called out. Arsenal, all United fans are posting up diagonal pictures and all sorts of dumb stuff. I've seen some questionable lines drawn on those things, but saying that, it still raises the issue of, if it's there, well then do you need to throw it up on the thing just to clear up before the game ends? Otherwise, you have a media storm following on from every game, kind of thing. Is it that far gone, or just get rid of it in the first place? Anyway, but that's another day. Arsenal, they're showing that they can win. They can grind out a result. They can go for a win. They can take on the big boys and push towards that thing. Like, they could have sat there, gone to 1-1 and just kind of rip-rocketed in, but no, they were still going for it. They were happy to take that chance of a loss and get a win in the end. So only time will tell.
Yeah, well, Arsenal's only loss this season has come against Manchester United the first time around. They've got their vengeance now. Casemiro obviously didn't play. Would he have made a difference? Probably, but that's right. They played him against Palace. He got a yellow card, and that's his own fault. It's his own doing. They could have rested him for the bigger game. Arsenal, I mean, like you said a bit earlier, like, it is theirs to lose now. They do look the goods. They've beaten most teams they've faced, 16 wins out of a possible 19. I mean, this performance in itself is very spirited. They deserve the win. They got it in the end. And it kind of just, they're taking each game as it comes, and 5 points clear with a possible 3 more to come if they win their game in hand. I mean, yeah, it's looking good if you're a Gunners fan, but I still want to say no, they're not winning it, but it is definitely theirs to lose now. Eddie Nketiah stepped up when Gabriel Jesus has not. Well, he's obviously injured. So fair play to the Gunners. They're cracking on. And it's impressive because, again, like you said earlier, you got to stick with the manager, and they're reaping the rewards now of sticking with the manager. So, yeah. Now, obviously, you've said Arsenal are going to win the league. United, top 4, will they get it? Or is someone to pip them to it?
Most likely. There's no one really that's going to come for them. They're far enough ahead, I guess. But
well, 3, but with a possible 3 more points to get a game in hand. But yeah, they're having a good season. I think, again, top 4 for United probably is deemed as a good season under Ten Hag so far. But yeah, impressive from Arsenal. I don't know what else to say about them. Fair play. They deserve the win. They've been playing beautiful football. And let's now get into the other side, well, North London still, but a 1-0 win for Spurs to wrap up the round over Fulham this morning. Harry Kane scores his 266th Tottenham goal, equal record now. Again, you're very, very clever about Harry Kane, so talk to me about that. He's apparently agreed possibly to sign a contract extension and never going to win a trophy in his lifetime. What do you reckon?
If he signs that contract, he deserves everything he's kept coming to him. Because, don't get me wrong, every club would benefit from having a Harry Kane because he's a great striker, he's a great finisher, but he can also play that deeper role. He can kind of adjust to a game, I think, arguably where Haaland can't. But in saying that, Haaland's probably the more complete version of a striker, whereas Kane can fill in a bit more. But if he continues on at Tottenham, then he's just done himself a disservice. He will be one of those names that are in that top 10 that our kids or grandchildren, if it comes to it, will go, who the hell was that? Because you think about it, like, there's not many. He doesn't have the highlight reel of a Giroud. Now, not every striker needs to have that kind of thing. But he's not going to have the highlight reel. He's just going to have this glorified number for a club that's never won anything and a club that doesn't do anything right by him. So I don't understand why he would stay. He can't. He's going to get more money somewhere else. He will possibly have the chance at winning something else. And even if he doesn't win something else somewhere else, at least he gave it a shot because, we sat there and knocked Messi for how many years about staying with the club and he actually won things there. How is this not translated to Harry Kane at a club that's not even giving him the chance to win anything?
Well, I suppose a good comparison would be Robin Van Persie, right? Like, what is the Arsenal for however many years? Finally made the jump to United, was hated by Arsenal, ended up getting a guard of honour at Arsenal as he won the league with United. It could happen if Haaland just went to United, went to City, Chelsea, I don't know, Liverpool. Like, I just throw every other name other than Spurs out there. He's a loyal man. He'll obviously get the top goal scorer record for Spurs. He'll probably have the Premier League top goal scorer record in maybe 3 seasons' time if he's lucky. But where's the trophy to go with?
Away.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, where's the trophy to go with it? Like, he could have quite a few titles to his name. Even Bayern, I'd love to see him go abroad and just win a few Bundesligas because he's not, there's no issue with loyalty if you go into the Bundesliga. Like, he's not going and play for a direct rival. So
I still think that Newcastle would be the perfect fit for him. I will die on that hill because
the name you're throwing around,
he can go to that club. He'll get the wage. You know what? And he'll get given the opportunity to do something. They'll glorify a cup for him. They'll scrap a cup, whatever it may be, because it's an achievement for Newcastle just as much as it is for him. But even if they don't, he can help build that club into something better for the future, which can be respected by the Newcastle fans. At least he gave it a crack. He sits there at Tottenham. Levy sells some more players. They go through that cycle. I understand they spent money this year, but he does this every 10 years, it looks like it, or every 7 or 8 years. You're talking about Kane needing it in 3 years to get this trophy. He's going to be, 37 or 36? Something like that.
Yeah.
He can't play that football. He's not going to. The Spurs aren't going to accommodate to that. So,
well, as I said, that's the rumor. He's going to sign a new contract. The other rumor is apparently Conte's going to leave at the end of the season. Who do they bring in? Do they get Poch back in? Does someone else come in? But I think it's just going to be the same stuff. I don't see Spurs being the team that's going to go and win the league in the next 5 years. I don't. So I am in agreement. He probably does need to leave, but I don't know. Can you even respect his loyalty? I suppose. Like, it's good to see, but it's one thing to be loyal to a team that's winning constantly. It's similar to James Ward-Prowse, I suppose. Like, you're going to go down as a hero at that club even if you do leave. But comparing Southampton, like, Spurs aren't going to get relegated, but like, Kane's only going to go to a rival because they're doing better. Like, he's not going to a rival. He's not going to go to Arsenal. He's going to go to a United or a City or someone like who's going to win a title.
Well, you look at it and you've got the history shows that Gerrard's biggest knock was he's never won the Prem. At least he won a Champions League with the club. You can love a club enough to stay there and be loyal.
Well, that's
Liverpool had the opportunity. Right. Like they at least gave it a crack, and they'll still give you a crack for him. Whereas Spurs, like, other than that one season where they managed to scrape second, they've sat in third or fourth, not anywhere near the top two. I understand where the levels were, but
yeah, exactly. They finished second, arguably like a one-horse race. They lost to Leicester. No, sorry, they finished third that year, actually. Arsenal, I think, got them, didn't they, into second, I believe? Finished third in the two-horse race, they say. They got to a Champions League final, but then they don't capitalise on that. They don't do anything with that. They've never given him the players to help him. Son is having a poor season. Kulusevski coming in, being great. But again, like, Daniel Levy just needs to throw the checkbook because they're going to lose Conte, who's a good manager. Don't know who they're going to get in. Obviously, probably Poch at this point should come back.
It's Poch.
Yeah, but
is that just admitting that the clubs they're all got it wrong? They've just wasted 3 years of Kane's life.
Yeah, but look, he's going to sign a new contract, and that's the way it's going to be. Kudos to him. They got a win against Fulham. Fulham still looking good. They've lost 2 in a row though. Spurs, to wrap it up, they got the win.
Fulham looked better this game. That was it.
Yeah, that's all we're going to finish with. Look, again, I'm going to go back. We're two subscribers away from 100. Hurry up and get us there, lads. Thanks for joining me, Morty. We'll hopefully have Tony back next week to talk about United again. Hopefully get all 3 of us on at some point together. It's hard to meet the schedules up, but yeah, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again next week.